Okay, it's time for our big preview, AFC flag football versus the NFC flag football. Now, we're not going to get into that game a whole lot, but we will give you some early thoughts on the Super Bowl. As we can see, the Chiefs are 1.5-point favorite against the Eagles in this game. They over under 49 right now as we sit on January 30th. So a week and a half or so away from the game. I'm Gino here, along with Erik from ETOF21 Sports. So, Erik, first things first, I know you're someone who always likes to lock stuff in as early as possible before movement. Was there anything that you locked in right away when this number came out for this game, for this total, or anything that you hit on like quickly?
Do I want to tell you the reasoning, or I want to just tell you what I
mean? Yeah, go ahead, and then we can get into it. What was something that you jumped on right away?
I have a couple. The first one, first half under 24.5. First half unders 12, 6, and 1 the last 19 Super Bowls. When the total is 24.5 or higher, 8 and 1 to the under. Reed 3 and 1 first half unders in the Super Bowls he's been in. Eagles 10 and 7 to the under for the first half this year. High pressure Super Bowl environment. Teams often look to play cautious, avoid turnovers and mistakes. Offenses are typically conservative early, focusing on getting the run game going. PFF, Eagles top defense, Chiefs graded number 2 defense. DVOA, Eagles are the top, Chiefs are the 12th. With how good these defenses are, being a high stress situation, I think that, I like the first half under here. Correlated with that, I bet more points scored second half than first half. As I said, teams start nervous. Stuff starts to open up in the second half. The last 20 years, the second half total has been higher than the first half total 55% of the times. When we look at it, the second half total in the Super Bowl has gone over 55% of the times. When we look at this trend the last 25 years, it's hit 17, 7, and 1.
Wow.
I expect this to be a high-scoring first half. Dallas Goedert's total is 49.5. I wouldn't play that. I bet it at 46.5. I wouldn't play that. It's ballooned out so much. 3 other ones. Saquon Barkley, under 116 rushing yards.
That number has gotten so high.
And it's dipped down. It's at 113. When we look at the Chiefs defense, they've only allowed 106.7 rushing yards per game, 9th fewest in the league. Regular season, no running back rushed over for 85 yards. McCormick, the third string back for the Raiders, had 84. That was the best during the regular season. Joe Mixon had 88 during the playoffs in the divisional round. So no runner this year has ran over 89 yards, individual runner. Now, in the run game, they have allowed over 100 yards total. We're just talking individual running.
Yeah, as a team. But
in DVOA against the run, PFF has them graded on the 10th. When we look at Barkley against PFF top 11 defenses, he's only averaging 73 yards per game. When you look at half of the top half of the run defenses per DVOA, he's only averaging 101.
So he bullied the bad teams.
Yep. And when we take away those explosive runs he's had, he's only averaging like 3 yards per carry.
And we saw that even in the game with the Rams where they had those 2 big explosive runs, but then on the down to down, they were keeping him contained for the most part, right? It's the big runs that and you were hitting on like with the defenses, a little bit of the time off, but you also have these really smart defensive coordinators too, right? For both of these teams, they're just
strategy. It's all Barkley, and Spags is going to look to prioritize, obviously, what? Stopping Saquon Barkley.
Forcing Hurts to throw the ball a little bit more.
To throw the ball. When we look at it, now he's gone over this total the last 2 games. Commanders, PFF rush defense 29th, DVOA 26. Rams, 15th PFF, 21st DVOA. Significant upgrade in the defenses that he's going to be playing against the Chiefs. Offensive line issues, Dickerson, Jordans, Johnson, all banged up. Barkley's nursing a calf injury. To me, this just makes sense here. And then my off-the-radar bet is I bet Devontae Smith over 49.5 receiving yards, and I bet him 66-1 to win the MVP.
Nice.
Spagnola's going to do this. What are the If I'm Spagnuolo, number 1, Barkley.
Then
Number
AJ Brown.
2, AJ Brown. Number 3, hurts his legs. Number 4, probably Dallas Goedert. And then we just kind of have Devontae Smith in a favorable matchup. But when we look at his production for the playoffs, second on the team in receiving yards, receptions, third in targets. For the entire season, second in targets, receptions, and yards. And this is where it really stood out. He's faced the Spagnuolo defense 3 times. In those 3 times, he's averaged 9 targets, 7 receptions, 107 yards per game. In the Super Bowl 2 years ago, 9 targets, 7 receptions, 100 yards. So obviously with this total, the thing is Brown's coming off a big game. Dallas Goedert, everybody loves. I just think that Smith is just getting overlooked by the market, and this number is a little bit too low. He's gone over this total in 9 of 13 games that he's played in this season. And then 66-1. Now, look, obviously with the Eagles win, it probability is high it's going to go to Hurts, but we've seen it before. For whatever reason, people in the media just don't like Jalen Hurts, and I don't understand why. If Devontae Smith has 2 touchdowns and like 120, 130 yards winning, I could see him being the MVP and not Jalen Hurts. So
totally agree. That's the kind of those are the kind of players
is worth like a pizza money bet. So
absolutely, those are the kind of players you're looking for. Players who could get there with the right type of narrative. Right, there are versions of this game that happen just like you said. If you're doing it out of 100%, right? There are 15, 20 different times where that were to happen. And so absolutely, that's the number. So before we move on, let's kind of put the finishing touches on a couple of these teams that got eliminated. It was a really good year for Washington, right? I mean, they showed you how if you hit on a couple big moves, you could improve your team a lot really quickly. They hit on the coordinators and their coaches. Quinn did a really nice job. Kingsbury did a really nice job. And the most important one, they hit on the quarterback. Even in that game when they lost, Eric, what I'd like to see is Jalen Hurts Jaden Daniels has such a good demeanor. The way he carries himself, he's just very he doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. Even in the biggest of moments when things were not going his way, he still seemed very comfortable out there. You always got to be careful because when teams make their runs, we always just assume, they're going to be right back there in the same spot next year. It's not that easy. But for Washington, they went from a team that was floundering for a lot where they feel like, okay, they've got their quarterback and they might be okay with their coach. And so now can they fill in around? They did a really good job bringing in some veterans, guys on the defensive side, guys like Eckler, and that were kind of help filling holes. They're not built for the long term, but they have a nice start. They were just overmatched in that game, right? I mean, it just seemed like the turnovers hurt them, but every time they started to get a little bit momentum, they just didn't have enough. They didn't have the guys in the trenches like the Eagles did.
This is what stood out to me. The first one, I'm not a big proponent early on going for it, but with how the Commanders have played this season, it didn't make sense for me on that first drive where they had 4th and 2 from the Eagles 19, excuse me. They've already gone for it twice. Why didn't they go for it there?
You're already committed once you've gone for it.
That would have been the 3rd time you're going for it. Didn't understand that. If you would have told me Austin Eckler had 7 targets, 5 receptions, I would have thought he had like 40, 50 yards. He only had 17 yards.
Yeah.
Disastrous close to the first half. There was that touchdown. Then right after that, Nichols fumbled, led to another touchdown. They just couldn't get the ball going. There just wasn't enough momentum. Blankenship really struggled to contain Ertz. 16 targets, 11 receptions, 104 yards. Blankenship against Kelsey could legitimately be a concern for Fangio. He's going to have to come up, maybe double team, maybe put – I think Dijon's a little bit too small. Do you have Slay go against them? What are you going to do against Kelsey? Fangio's defense, look, they brought him in to win games like this. Commanders, 4.5 yards per play, only 350 yards. Commanders, they need some help offensively.
Yes.
Offensive line, they don't have depth. They don't have a dependable wide receiver 2,
right?
or a wide receiver 3. Really,
Yeah.
when you look at their roster, they don't even have a lead running back. Robinson, 43 yards per game, 11 carries for 36 yards against the Eagles. My thing with the Eagles have a ton of cap room. Great season, not taking anything away, totally overachieved. But I said it when we did our previous show on here that next year was the year I want to look to get invested with the Commanders. Now, obviously, with how they did this year, they're going to be overvalued going into next year. So that's obviously gone. I think they need to approach this offseason not as a team that was one game away from the Super Bowl,
but like you're building.
That was 5-11.
Because it could be dangerous when you feel like you're just one piece away.
Yeah,
from
they look to add multiple pieces. This running back class is just insanely deep. They'll be able to get a good, capable running back. Let Eckler walk. Have Robinson be the lead guy. Get Hampton from North Carolina come in. Eventually, let him start toward the end of the season. Offensive line. This draft class is loaded with offensive line talent. So get that, and then diversify your funds. Like I mentioned it last week when we talked about the Texans. Elijah Moore is going to be insanely discounted. You bring Elijah Moore in as your number 2 to go along against Terry McLaurin, you got something. You're building some weapons, but you don't want to go all in on 1 or 2 players.
Overpay.
You got to get a lot of pieces to maintain this. You had a good first step. You got to keep it going. The Hurts winning formula. He just doesn't take risks. He just doesn't put his team in a position to lose. Now, there's times he could have thrown it up to Brown. He just didn't do it because that's not his style. And we kind of look at what this kid has done. He has won 70% of his games in the
Unbelievable.
league. Wild card, Super Bowl. Wild card, Super Bowl.
And he wasn't supposed to be a starting quarterback coming into the league either. He was not one of the top guys. We weren't sure that he was going to be able to be a number 1 QB.
This kid gets so much hate for no reason. I wish the story about him in Alabama, I talked about it last time they were on here. Kiffin discovered him. Kiffin brought him in. He got them to the championship game. They lost to Deshaun Watson. He was benched for Tua the following year. Tua had one good throw in the game. Then everyone seems to forget the following year in the SEC championship game, who came in the second half to lead them to back from
after being benched.
Jalen Hurts.
Everything that went down, he still had the head on his shoulders to come in and
if Kiffin never left, Hurts would have stayed the starter. And then he leaves to go to Oklahoma and leads Oklahoma to the college football playoffs. He's the winningest football player in Texas high school football history. This kid just does nothing, but everywhere he goes, just wins. And I hope that his story is told more. I'm really concerned about the Eagles' offensive line. Johnson, Dickerson, Jordans, all those guys got banged up. And they do have some depth, but we saw that when Sears came in, there definitely was a step down. He definitely didn't really do a good job protecting that left side of the line. And Goddard's been balling out in these playoffs. He's definitely came into a little bit of a weapon. Little bit surprised he's getting that much run. And interesting to see year 2, what is Jaden Daniels?
Does he take that step backwards a little bit, right?
Because year 2 is always a year we kind of see what's up.
Who they are.
Year 1, getting used to the NFL game, studying defenses, can have a bad year, take a step up. And there's been so many quarterbacks that had this great first season, then took a huge step backwards. This year, CJ Stroud, great first season, phenomenal first season, step backward this year when defenses started to figure him out. So, it's definitely going to be interesting to see, what happens with the Commanders and what pieces they look to add to what they already have to try to, win a championship.
Commanders had a fantastic year. Eagles now will head into the big game in about a week and a half. And we had the second game where we had another matchup with the Chiefs and the Bills. And honestly, if you were someone on the television networks and the ratings and stuff, you couldn't really have asked for a better game, Eric, where you had a competitive game back and forth. Both teams were in on it. I will say it didn't really feel like we got the best of the Bills here and there. Like they just little mistakes here and there. They were just trying so hard to lean on Allen. I think we could see just the difference of not having that extra playmaker there without the Diggs or without someone that they were really confident that could go make a big play. Cooper was really disappointing. I think since they made the trade for him, he didn't really step up as that guy that they needed. So it almost seems like some of the concerns we had about them early in the year, when you get to playing the best teams late in the year again, those rose up. And, there were a couple calls that go either way. The Bills had their opportunities to win this game still late in the game, and they had plenty of chances here. It was just the same sort of situation that happens. I think I saw 17 games in a row that Kansas City has won by one score. That's nuts.
Just absolutely insane. Initially, when I first saw the game, I was like, Jesus, dude, Kincaid almost made a great play. But when you watch all 22 footage, he was absolutely wide open.
I know.
What's even more disgusting is on the opposite side of field, Shakir was even wider.
More wide open. But Allen couldn't really, like the way the play was.
In fairness, he couldn't get there with the blitz.
But if you're looking at the film, though, the overhead,
you're kind of like, oh, shit.
Oh, my God, he's wide open over there, and then Kincaid's wide open over there. It's just Allen's getting bum rushed, right? Like
that's because they rushed so many people.
Yeah.
Bills just poor execution on the tush push. It's called the tush push.
You push.
Eagles have got Dallas Goedert back there. AJ Brown, when he's not lined up fighting Lattimore, pushing Jalen Hurts. The Bills had 5'10", 173-pound James Cook back there pushing him. Really didn't understand that. And also, if you watch the push, the one thing that is consistent, every single one of them, Dalton Kincaid ends up on the ground. Like, not a good game
no
for Kincaid at all. I was a little confused about the flag, too, because they said there was a flag on that play with the.
And then
So I don't know. Like, we really will never know. That was a little bit weird. The spot ruling. Now, look, who you want to win is going to determine if it was a first down or not.
Absolutely.
To me, it just comes down to the fact that I think we can all agree that there should be some sort of tracking device.
100%. Those kinds of decisions nowadays shouldn't be judgment calls anymore. No way. Like the spotting, the first downs, that kind of stuff. There's no reason why we can't just have a sensor in the ball that tells you if it crossed the line or not.
Or even when there's a shank punt, it goes out of bounds. It's just some guy on the sideline and he's guesstimating.
And he's eyeballing where it went out. Well, it's like, give me a break. Come on.
A little bit of a chip in the ball.
Absolutely.
You look to do that.
Totally agree.
Bill's secondary. McDermott likes to play man, but all the guys that were out there because they were so banged up can't play man coverage. Now, they had $70 million in dead cap, but they're going to have to really make a concerted effort in this draft of getting guys that can cover in man coverage if that's what McDermott wants to do, because they were just getting eaten alive. I don't understand the usage of Cook. And also, when you're doing that drive with 3:13 left, why is Ty Johnson getting a carry? I talked about the Chiefs' run defense earlier. Cook had
one of the better games of anyone this year.
Only 13 carries, 85 yards, 6.5 per carry. And he second best performance this year against the Chiefs. And he only had 13 carries. I don't understand why Brady wasn't giving him the ball.
It just seemed like they wanted to lose with the ball in Allen's hand, right? It just wanted to be like, he's the reason why. You could see they weren't getting very creative. Like Allen, he can pick up some big first downs here and there when you need, but they were really spying, really focused on trying to take him away. And Allen he only had 39 yards on his 11 carries, right? Yeah. Just the difference between those two guys. Cook was doubling him basically on yards per carry.
we talked about the Bills playmakers. Now, look, I think Shakir has shown he can be a number one in this league for the Bills with the offense. He can move into the digs, but they definitely need to put some pieces around him. Coleman, very limited in his field route running tree. He can basically stretch the field right now. Doesn't have all the routes. He will get the routes, but he definitely needs to develop him. Max Hollins really just lacks versatility. He's a step down from Gabe Davis and a step slower from what they had last year. And Amari Cooper, you mentioned him. He went there. We were very high on him. We thought he was going to get some run. He is merely a rotational.
I know.
And this is a contract year for him. And he is having his worst season as a pro.
Cost himself a lot of money in the last 6 months,
Flip side, just a master class from Reed. Everyone was talking about Kelce's performance against the Bills. What does he do? He lines up Kelce to the outside. By doing that, stat line obviously took a hit. 4 targets, 2 receptions, 19 yards. But that opened up the middle of the field for Juju Smith-Schuster.
Worthy and Hollywood Brown, right?
Game. And Brown, I will say this. Brown looked connected to Mahomes. There looked like there was connection. There was chemistry there, which stood out. One player I was a little bit surprised was D-Hop. 2 targets, 1 reception, 11 yards. I expected a little bit more of a usage from him. Now it's going to be really interesting to see you playing the Eagles defense, the Fangio defense, whose DB, this huge step up. How are these DBs going to match up to the weapons? And what is Kansas City going to do to move the ball? Now, obviously, you look at them, you have the kid Mitchell. He'll probably be on, he'll probably be on Brown. Dijon's their fastest. He'll probably take Worthy. Slay will probably take D-Hop. If you put Blankenship on Kelce, that's probably that matchup to attack. But will they do that? Will they roll coverage to Kelce? And it's just interesting because if you just kind of go through the check marks, okay, who's got the better offensive line? Eagles. Who's got the better defensive line? Eagles. Who's got the better linebacker core? Eagles. Who's got the better secondary? Eagles. Who's what I mean? Who's got the better wide receiver group? Eagles. Who's got the better running back? Eagles. Who's got the better special teams? Chiefs. Who's got the better quarterback? Chiefs. Who's got the better coaching staff? Chiefs. You know what I mean? So it's like as a whole,
it's the Eagles, but the few important things that could be like really key, right? Like special teams, like you're saying, you miss a kick, you fumble a ball, something like that. Hurts versus Mahomes, 1 or 2 turnovers one way or the other. And then the staff, when it comes down to it, Sirianni can get a little cute, can get a little strange sometimes. You trust a little more. So overall, if we were ranking 10 things, it'd probably be 7 Eagles, but the 3 maybe most important, or 3 of those most important ones probably are the Chiefs.
And it's an interesting game. Like I have 15-1. I gave it out on your show way back in August. Yeah. And I'm just sitting on that. Do I want to hedge it? No, not really. It's hard for me because it's one of those things when you do the stuff, and we all do. We look at all the X's and O's we all look at the metrics we all look at, do our little models that we all do, and cap the game. And we come out and we have the Eagles favored. But then you look and you're like, they have Patrick Mahomes. You know what I mean?
How could they not be favored, right? Yeah.
It's one of those things you look at it. Now, obviously, lines are going to move, stuff's going to move, and I think this game is just going to be just like the other game was against the Bills, just a great live betting opportunity. When on your show, I was like, hey,
you called it again. Yep.
Get the whatever team scores first, bet on the other team. After the Chiefs scored, I was able to get the Bills plus 6.5 for the first half, plus 5.5 for the game. And I was just able to sit on those. And if this is a situation where the Chiefs get the ball first and they score, or the Chiefs score, the Chiefs are the first team to score, you're going to get a good line on Philadelphia. Now, depending on where it is in the half, I mean, you kind of have to use that if you want to bet Eagles for this first half, but I mean, there'll be value then on the Eagles for the game. So yeah, it's intriguing game. Definitely looking forward to it. I'm really hoping that, the Eagles can get it done this time, but it's always cool when you get to see history being made.
Yeah, and I'm not someone that gets bored or tired of these. Like, I think when you have the great team, them being in there, win or loss, is fun. Like, you want that team to beat, to deny. You want to see them get defeated, or you want to see, like you said, wow, they did it again, the third in a row. And honestly, if you like the Chiefs, it's not bad value. Very rarely are you going to get a team that's probably a 2-time returning Super Bowl champ, and they're only favored by point and a half. But it's like you were hitting on, the Eagles are a really well-balanced football team. Like, they just don't have a whole lot of weaknesses. There's not a lot of spots that you could really point to and say, that's a hole. Maybe the Chiefs have a better quarterback, but it's not like Hurts is a weakness. Maybe the Chiefs have better coaching, but the coordinators for the Eagles have been fantastic this year. They've been really, really good. So I'm looking forward to this game. We're going to get more into it next week. You can check out Erik's podcast as well. Well, he'll be talking all about that. And we'll have some fun talking about the different props and all the sorts of different things we can play next week. And then the transition will be made from football into basketball. Erik, buddy, thanks so much for helping us with the early look at the big game. Anything else you want to hit on? Normal show schedule for you this week?
Yeah, normal schedule. Had my buddy Pat on last Tuesday. Him and I gave some early bets out for the Super Bowl, look back at both games. And then I'll have another preview episode that comes out Tuesday, and then be more UFC Central this Friday when my podcast comes out, plus talk about Terry Rozier gambling and Justin Tucker and Deshaun Watson.
I was going to say, Jesus. Yeah. Oh, man. So we'll be following along with you. Some of the best information you get in sports there from Erik. If you're watching on the YouTube, do me a favor, subscribe to the YouTube channel below. Thanks so much for hanging out with us, everyone. Good luck in all of your plays this weekend. We'll be back and dive into more props and everything for the big game next week.